Hey everybody, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. I haven't had a chance to catch a fish on that thing, but I will. But today we're going to make another lure. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I've already got it drawn on the board. Unfortunately, I didn't have the camera rolling while I was drawing it. But what this is intended to actually be is a hickory shad. I really love the shape of this fish. I think that it looks like a little mini tarpon. Now I am going to make it a lipped crankbait, but I don't want it to be a solid body. I'm going to have one joint in it. And we'll have 2 slots for hinges. And each slot will have a hinge eye coming in here, and there'll be a pin running through them. And hopefully that'll give us a really nice deep body movement when we're cranking it. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to do things a little bit different on this video. I'm going to keep it a little faster paced, a little shorter. So there's going to be limited detailed information. I'm going to leave some links to videos and playlists in the description so you guys can watch at your leisure and fill in the gaps. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and cut this thing out. I've already transferred it onto this piece of maple. Maple is nice and hard, but still kind of light. I'm going to make this lure a floating lure, but maybe not a really high floating lure. But let's go ahead and get this thing cut out. With the rough shape cut out, I can take it to the belt sander and start working on the taper from front to back, narrowing it and then rounding the top and the bottom. It takes a little time, but with a little patience, you can really get a nice result. Time for some hand sanding to get the final shape. All right, with the eye socket drilled in and the carvings outlined, and I did that freehand, but I'm pretty happy with the symmetry. Looks pretty doggone close. I can go ahead and start carving, get that stuff sanded, and we'll move on to the next step. With the lure pretty much shaped, I want to go ahead and make my own diving bit. With this 1-inch plug cutter, I'm cutting a plug out of this 1/8 inch plexiglass. This way, I'll have a perfectly round dive bit. All I need to do now is sand the outer edge, the cut edge, nice and smooth, and then polish it off on my wheel. Well, we've got the shape carved in pretty nicely and sanded out. We've got the carvings done and the details around the mouth. So I'm pretty happy with that. The next steps are going to be more adding hardware and getting ready to cut this thing in half. I've got a little mark right there where I'm going to cut a groove for the little dorsal fin. I've got little marks where I'm going to drill the holes for the screw-in eyes and the tie-on eye all the way at the front. So now to mark where I need to cut it, I'm going to use the original drawing on the painter's tape, put it back on the body, and that'll give me the line for this cut. But before I cut it in half, I'm going to go ahead and cut in the grooves I need for the fins. All right, now it's time to go ahead and drill out the pilot holes for the hook eyes and the tie-on eye. Then I get about 1 inch of embedment. And I'm going to drill the tie on eye so that it's going and just catching the very edge of the dive lip. That'll give the dive lip a little more strength and give the tie on eye a nice steep angle against the loads from the line. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make the twist eyes by twisting them around back end of a little drill bit. And I'm making it out of 195-pound leader wire. And I use about 4 inches for each one. And I'll prep them all with a little bit of a shoulder in the bend. And I'll twist them up with my safety wire twisting pliers. And that's what you end up with. All right, I've done the calculations for my target weight for the lure. And the weight of the lure is right around 15.23. My target weight is right at 25. So we need to weigh in all the hardware. So here are the hooks and split rings, all the twist eyes we're going to use, and the 2 hinge pins. And we're right at 19.8. So I think with these 2 split shots, we get right at 25 points right on. So I just need to put these 2 guys inside the body. I'll go ahead and just backfill these things with a little bit of sawdust, cap it off with some UV resin, and set it with a little bit of UV light. And we'll be ready to sand this thing in just a few minutes. And that's what it looks like when it's sanded down nice and smooth. And now it's time to make the dreaded cut. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a notch in here and round this off so it's going to make sort of a knuckle joint in between the 2 halves. Now I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes for the hinges. And I'll take them and place them in here temporarily just to make sure they fit. Put the hinge pin in there and make sure it's nice and perpendicular to the center line of this thing. That's pretty good. Now I need to add some slots to the back part of the lure to accept those hinges. Time to drill the hole for the hinge pin. And we'll wait till after the paint job to actually fully assemble it. All right, let's get started with the foil. I went ahead and used the original drawing. This is on a folded over piece of HVAC foil. And I'll just cut out the outline of this, and I'll do the same with the tail. And we'll have all 4 pieces. After quickly cutting this out, I have both pieces, left and right. And there's both pieces for the tail. All right, now with them cut off, I'm gonna go ahead and put some texture. I got a video on doing this and making these tools. I'll put that in the description. And hopefully that shows up on the camera, but you get a nice subtle scale pattern sort of embossed in there. That's got us started. All right, I think we're ready to paint. And it's going to be a real simple paint scheme since we already got the silver, which essentially is the whole paint job. There's a bit of blue-green along the top. There's dark around the eye, obviously dark on top. And then there's a little bit of copper on the bottom here. The fins are just going to have to be the color of the brush bristles. And then I'll put a little bit of gold in there along probably right around the middle, lengthwise. And we'll see how that comes out. All right, I've got it in my holder, and I'm gonna start off by painting the raw wood with silver. And I've got this iridescent silver from Golden's. And we'll do it in multiple light coats. And I'm gonna paint the inside of the joint silver too. All right, that's got it, I think. Now I want to go ahead and add a little bit of detail to the face. So I'm going to put a transparent gray color. It's called oil discharge. And I don't really care about being careful. I'm going to wipe off the excess. Wipe it off with a little bit of alcohol. And that makes those carvings stand out a lot more. And now I'll put a little bit of dark around the eye. And we'll paint that dark stripe across the top. And I'll do the same thing to the back. All right, now I'm going to use this transparent golden yellow. Try to do this a little delicate. I don't want to make it really golden. I just want to have a golden hue along the top. Probably barely showing up in the camera, but and I'll do the same thing on the back. So that looks pretty good. Now we'll move on to blue. And this is also a transparent blue. It's called Ghost Tint Blue. And I'm gonna hit it a little darker up near the top and then really just a light misting in the middle of the body. A little bit on the gill and just barely noticeable. So it ends up being really iridescent, and there's a little bit of color shift from blue to blue-green to golden. And I'm going to try to accomplish the same thing with the tail. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, and I just used a drill gauge and masked off everything but the 4 dots I wanted, and I went ahead and put those dots on. Looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to use this transparent brown that actually gives you a really nice copper color when you put it on top of silver. And I want it to come up a little bit on the foil. And the same thing with the tail. A little extra at the very end. All right, I think that's gonna look pretty nice. And lastly, I wanna put a little bit of red on the mouth, and I'll be using some pearl red. All right, that's that for the paint job. I need to put a mid coat on it. I use Minwax polyacrylic as sort of a sealer for the paint. Then I'll get the clear coat on it, and then we have to do the full assembly, and I've got to put the tail fin and the fin on top and that round dive lip. We got to get that installed too before we can actually get it out of the water. All right, it's time for assembly. First, I'm going to put the dive lip on there. All I'm doing is making sure it's in the right spot, and I'm going to fill the gap underneath it with some UV resin. Push it back in place and then hit it with the UV light, and the UV light will go right through the plastic and set that resin all the way down inside that gap. And I'll put a little bead all the way around the edge. This is going to be our dorsal fin. It'll go right there. Just need to cut it out. And it'll get glued in with the UV resin as well. Now we do the same with the tail fin. And we'll get this glued in too. And that looks pretty nice too. Now we just need to put it together. All right, we're in the boat on the lake. Well, at least at the ramp anyway. But right over there, there's a huge system rolling through and it's creeping that way, which is the way I've got to go. So I'm sitting here beached up, waiting for this to pass. I hope it passes. And then we'll get that lure in the water and see what it looks like. You know what? Let's go ahead and wait in the car because there's some lightning strikes coming down. Well, I might have declared victory a little too soon, but hopefully not. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of sunshine in a few minutes. All right, no time to waste. Let's put this guy on the rod and see what it looks like in the water. All right, that looks really good. Let's see if it comes back nice and straight. Oh yeah, oh, nice action. You know, it's interesting, the head moves and the tail sort of stays stable. Okay, it wants to move a little bit to my right. I'll go ahead and tune it and then we'll get some underwater shots. All right, that has a really nice action. It tracks really straight and casts a long way. I like that my weight and balance came out perfect because it floats nice and easy. So I really can't wait to put this thing in the water in the Gulf, go after some trout and redfish with it, maybe even some snook. This would be a really nice snook lure. Thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like this format, a little quicker, a little less information, but a little more concise, let me know. And if you want me to balance it a little more with a little more information, let me know that too. But again, I'll have playlists and videos linked in the description that covers just about everything I did with this. Thanks for supporting the channel. And if you guys have friends that want to watch this kind of stuff, send this to them and let me know what you guys think about this kind of lure. I'm going to fish for a little while between thunderstorms and I'll see you guys on the next video.